What are reasonable adjustments? The Equality Act 2010. The Equality Act 2010 replaced a range of laws passed since the 1970s, for example, the Race Relations Act, the Sex Discrimination Act, the Disability Discrimination Act. The Equality Act legally protects people from discrimination in the workplace and in wider society. It replaced previous anti-discrimination laws with a single act, making the law easier to understand and strengthening protection in some situations. The protected characteristics safeguard everyone from discrimination from day one of employment. The definition of disability. Under the Equality Act 2010, you are disabled if you have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. The definition for disability is substantial, which means more than minor or trivial. Long-term means that the effect of the impairment has lasted or is likely to last for at least 12 months. Normal day-to-day activities include things like getting out of bed, washing, eating, walking and going shopping, reading, normal social interaction, formal social relationships, nourishing or caring for oneself, activities relevant to every day. The purpose of the Act is to prevent disability discrimination and provide protection for disabled people under the law. Examples of conditions covered under the Act. Here are some examples of ill health conditions covered under the Act: epilepsy, chronic fatigue, diabetes, dyslexia, ADD or ADHD, depression, back conditions, arthritis, HIV, MS or cancer from day one of diagnosis. Some visual impairments are also automatically classed as a disability and covered by the Act. What is not considered an impairment? There are some impairments that you do not have to make reasonable adjustments for. These include hay fever, addictions to alcohol, nicotine, and other substances. Addiction caused by medical treatment or prescribed drugs can still be considered impairments. Why we need to make reasonable adjustments. Making reasonable adjustments in the workplace applies to the entire workforce. This includes job applicants, apprentices, contract workers. Failure to make these adjustments can result in tribunal action. Employers are required by law, Equality Act 2010, to make sure workers with disabilities or physical or mental health conditions are not substantially disadvantaged when applying or doing their jobs. This means that disabled workers, as far as is reasonable, have the same access to everything involved from application to doing and keeping their job as a non-disabled person. There is no set definition of reasonable. A reasonable adjustment will vary from person to person. What is considered reasonable for one company may not be reasonable for another. Types of reasonable adjustments. The most important lesson is that one size does not fit all. It is not possible to recommend specific solutions for someone with dyslexia, for example, without considering the environment they work in, how much their role relies on their reading or writing, or whether they have related issues such as dyscalculia. Different people will need different adjustments, even if they appear to have similar impairments. People may often know exactly what support they need or how to remove a particular barrier. If they don't, then it is best to make a referral to occupational health to get additional advice, guidance, or support. Occupational health can provide expert advice on reasonable adjustments and workplace accommodations. Making reasonable adjustments is also about understanding the experiences of people living with different disabilities and impairments. This is about two-way communication. Small changes in the workplace can transform the productivity of any employee, but they can be a complete game changer for disabled people. That includes adjustments to work patterns and responsibilities, but can also include technology changes, such as having the right software, using the right screen, or simply changing the size of the font. Other examples which could benefit the employee are submitting a flexible working request to alter their contracted hours on a temporary or permanent basis, technology such as screen reading software, reviewing job duties on a temporary or permanent basis, providing additional training or mentoring support if they change roles. Consider if adapting absence triggers would be a reasonable adjustment, allowing time off to attend medical appointments. Remember, reasonable adjustments must be reasonable and justifiable, and they don't need to be expensive. How long does an employer have to make reasonable adjustments? You must consider making adjustments as soon as you are reasonably expected to know about an employee's impairment or after they ask for a workplace adjustment. The timescale will depend on the specific adjustment and you as a company. Some simpler workplace adjustments can be made quickly. These can include providing longer or more frequent breaks, moving an employee to a ground floor workspace, allowing time off for treatment. Other adjustments may take longer because of installation times or costs. These can include changes to the building like widening doorways and adding ramps, providing a height-adjustable desk. What if reasonable adjustments cost too much? Employers should be aware of the impact that not providing a reasonable adjustment could have on the disabled employee. It could affect the employee's well-being, their day-to-day performance, and the quality of their work. But sometimes the cost of an adjustment is too high that it's not reasonable for the employer to make it. What's considered an unreasonable cost will depend on the specific request and the size and resources of the employer. If a reasonable adjustment request costs too much, you should talk to the employee about the cost and see if there are any other adjustments that can support them. Look for ways to reduce the cost of the adjustment, such as finding a cheaper alternative. Access to work grants. Employees can also apply for a government grant called Access to Work. This scheme can help pay for workplace equipment and practical support. Access to Work helps disabled people get or stay in work. The grant helps individuals get the practical support they need. Businesses and employers cannot apply for the Access to Work grant. Employees apply for it, but many are unaware of it or that they are eligible to apply. The grant does not replace your legal responsibility to make reasonable adjustments, but Access to Work might pay for a British Sign Language interpreter, specialist equipment, extra transport costs, such as a taxi if no public transport is available, workplace assessors to see what you need at work. Employers should help employees apply for Access to Work. This grant might cover their reasonable adjustment requests. Key learnings. The Equality Act legally protects people from discrimination in the workplace and in wider society. Under the Equality Act 2010, you are disabled if you have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. Making reasonable adjustments in the workplace applies to the entire workforce. This includes job applicants, apprentices, contract workers, and employees. The most important lesson is that one size does not fit all. Remember, reasonable adjustments must be reasonable and justifiable, and they don't need to be expensive. Employees can also apply for a government grant called Access to Work. We hope you have found this presentation useful, but if you have any questions or would like to know more, please speak with your line manager or HR department. Thank you for watching.